Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining our Friday weekly Lunch and Learn. Every Friday at noon, Sierra Club Iowa chapter goes live to give you an environmental update. And we have a really important one for you this week. We're going to talk about water testing and the lack thereof and what we have to do to make up for it. So I'm going to share my screen and get right started. And then we'll tell you about lake testing and beach testing. Okay. All right, we're going to talk about swimming safely, lake testing in Iowa. So in Iowa, the Iowa DNR does minimal statewide beach monitoring. They test about 38 beaches for state beaches and about 38 city or county beaches and 4 Corps of Engineer reservoirs. But we obviously know there's a lot more places to swim in Iowa than just those. There's private lakes, private beaches, smaller beaches that are maintained by cities or counties that just aren't monitored. But there's a lot in there that just are not monitored by the Iowa DNR. Of the ones the DNR tests, they monitor for 2 main things: indicator bacteria or E. coli, and high levels can indicate the water has become into contact with fecal material or poop or manure. The other thing they test for are cyanobacteria toxins. You may have heard of microcystins. These can form toxic algal blooms in the right conditions. The DNR tests water weekly. Every Friday, they put out a list, and they do that between Memorial Day and Labor Day. You can find the weekly results on their website or by calling their phone number. And nowadays, the news does a pretty good job of covering those weekly beach monitoring results. But we know that when those results come back, there can be hazards, and we see lots of beach closings every single week. Of those two, the things that we're worried about, the indicator bacteria and E. coli, it can cause severe diarrhea, stomach cramps, nausea, kidney damage, and then microcystins, those toxic algal blooms, they can cause rashes, severe liver damage, and asthma-like symptoms. So it's concerning, and it's important that we know about this before we go swimming. So what about all those other beaches? All of those other places you might swim that aren't on the DNR's list? Well, right now it's swim at your own risk, or you can test the water yourself. And we did that. We tested some water at a private lake, and we want to show you how we did that and the results that we found. So step one, if you want to test the water yourself because it's a beach that you plan on swimming in and it's not monitored by the DNR, there are a couple places that you can check to get a test. The statewide hygienic laboratory will mail you a test anywhere in the state, or some counties have county public health departments that also offer testing. So if your county does not, contact them first, and if they do not, then you'll have to go through the state hygienic laboratory. You'll go call them or go to their website and you order your tests. There's lots of different tests that you can do. The two that we did at this lake were the E. coli or indicator bacteria test, and then also nitrate, just because we were curious, knowing that that is a problem in Iowa. Step two, get your box and you find out what's inside. In this test kit,
here's one you're going to get in the mail when you order a test. It's going to have a box with a foam cooler, a bunch of ice packs. Ours have already been in the freezer, so they're frozen, and instructions and what should be included in your test, which tests you've ordered, and all of those materials will be in your cardboard box, packing materials. And we're going to do the sample test, pack it all up, and take it to the State Hygienic Laboratory in Ankeny.
so that's what you'll see inside your box when you order it. It may be a little bit different depending on what tests you order, but if you do those two tests, this is what comes in the box. Step two, really important. Read the instructions first. Don't start opening up the tests and, doing things that you may not be able to reverse if you can't collect the sample that day. There's some important steps that you have to do ahead of time. You can't just go right into it. You're going to get a bunch of ice packs, and those have to be frozen. So 24 hours before you do your test, you want to make sure you put those in the freezer ahead of time. You want to fill out the paperwork ahead of time. Each test that you order will have paperwork of where was the sample collected, at what time, your name. So fill out as much of that as you can before you do the test. Make sure you don't open those tests until you're ready. And remember that the samples must be delivered in person or same day shipping. They have to be received the same day. So that means it's probably not a good idea to do your test on Fridays because the lab closes over the weekend. You don't want to do it over the weekend, and then just maybe check with the lab ahead of time around holidays in case that they are closed. But it's important that you plan ahead, your ice packs are frozen, and that you're able to get the package to the lab that same day. Next up, you're going to actually collect your sample. Every sample or every test could be a little bit different, but the two that we did have pretty much the same instructions. You need to test in open water that's at least 2 to 3 feet deep. And then when you actually collect the sample, you only go about 12 to 18 inches below the surface water, or about up to your elbow. And you just swipe your hand through the water, collect your sample, and immediately put the lid on the sample. Next up is you are going to pack up your box. And again, there are instructions for this. You've got to make sure you filled out the rest of the paperwork about what time you actually collected the sample, and then you have to pack it correctly. Sometimes those test bottles cannot come in contact with the ice packs themselves, so you have to put some of the packing paper in between, and you want to make sure that you pack it all the way up to the top to make sure there's not a lot of movement or shaking going on in the box. And once you get that packed up, then you're going to head on over to the lab or to the post office. In my instance, there is a state hygienic laboratory near me, so I just drove my test samples on over to Ankeny. The state hygienic laboratory also has labs in Coralville and Lakeside, but they have to be received same day. So you either got to drive there or you've got to ship them same day shipping service, which can be pretty pricey. Now, if your local county has its own laboratory and its own testing process, you might have different instructions and it may be a bit easier to get the results to the lab. This is the Ankeny State Hygienic Laboratory. You have to go to the back of the building. It's a little bit confusing. But when I went there, I actually happened to be there at the same time Des Moines Waterworks was there, and they were dropping off dozens and dozens of samples. So it is quite a busy place, lots of water testing going on. And then you wait for your results. Now, this is why it is really important to test the water before you swim. This lake is not on DNR's testing list, and the results came back with significant E. coli levels. 390, they're the estimated parts per number of the 100 milliliters. That means there's significant fecal contamination. Swimming is considered unsafe. The usual level where they, close a beach down is 235 mean probable number. I think that's what that stands for, per 100 milliliter. Obviously, it's highly unsafe for drinking water. We will not be drinking out of the lake anyways, and there's a high chance of gastrointestinal illness if swallowed. And obviously, if you're an adult and you're waiting, it's pretty easy for you to make sure you're not drinking the water. But for kids and for pets, that's really hard to make sure they're not getting the water in their nose and their mouth. And it's just to be on the safe side, it's not worth getting in the water. Now, we also tested nitrate. Obviously, we're not drinking out of the lake, but we were just curious knowing that Iowa has a nitrate problem. And this particular lake was lower than the safe drinking water limit. 10 parts per million for the safe drinking water limit. The lake tested at 2.4. So it's really important. Had we not done this test, we would not have known that just ahead of the 4th of July holiday, it was probably unsafe to be swimming in the lake. So before you swim, be informed. You can check the DNR website every week. Fridays when they put out the new results, and they do that between Memorial Day and Labor Day. Do your own testing if you plan to swim in a body of water that is not tested by the DNR. And remember that you are just getting a snapshot of that given day. When you take that sample, it's going to tell you this is what the water is like on that given day. And lots of things can change depending on the temperature, rain, lots of different things. But you're going to get your sample and a pretty good idea of what it is in that time frame. And lastly, if we want to fix this problem in Iowa, whether it's nitrate, whether it's algal blooms, whether it is E. coli, we need to vote for clean water candidates. That is how we are going to change this in Iowa and make sure that we don't have to be worried every time we want to jump in. So thank you very much, everyone. We hope you have a great weekend and feel free to reach out to your county or the state hygienic laboratory for any beach that you planned on swimming on, or just in case you're curious. Thank you and have a great day.